had spoken about respecting all types of work.
Right.
And yet, I am hearing all the time this differentiation between CTE teachers and other teachers and academic teachers or academic instructors. And right after you said that on your next slide, there was a reference to CTE teachers being of quality of academic teachers or something to that effect.
It was about all teachers being high quality.
Right.
Right.
But if we have that lack of respect for people in an education field, and we're primarily educators,
Right.
we have a big issue with how we think of educational areas and program areas that's different than if they were, quote, academic program areas like psychology and sociology. You don't hear that type of, well, you might, but you don't hear that type of tension between those differentiations. And I think we're differentiating teachers in educational processes, and it makes it really even more difficult for our students.
And so the question is, how do you get from a world where the differentiation is the norm? Okay. And is the question differentiation so much? I mean, if it turns out, for example, that there was differentiation just because they really are qualitatively different, but there was equally respect because they were all viewed as being highly competent and respectful. I mean, respectable, right? And so the question is how do we get to the place where all of these various jobs are equally respected? Okay, and I would argue to you that part of what we have to do is we have to find ways to certify their quality. That just preaching at people is probably not going to help us much. Just saying, just like telling a kid, you should be nice. Just preaching like that doesn't really help that much. We have to figure out what are the dimensions and the reasons that people respect anything, okay? And it tends to be because they respect it if it does something that they value and if it's perceived as being of high quality. And so how can we vouch to people that CTE teachers are producing something of very high value and that they are doing it at a uniformly high level of quality? Okay, right now, I mean, most of my work these days is on teacher quality, okay? And there is huge variation inside almost every school in how effective teachers are being, okay? So we can verify that there are teachers in most schools who can produce 2 years' worth of learning in 1 year. But there are other teachers in the same school who produce half a year's worth of learning in 1 year, right? And so we've got to build the professional learning supports and incentive systems and all that help to raise the whole thing. And then we have to measure it well enough so that we can publicize that quality when we measure it. I mean, in Massachusetts, we did a report a couple years ago, or actually 3 years ago now, on exemplary high schools. And there are some high schools that are serving kids from blue-collar families that are making among the biggest achievement gains of any school in the whole state, right? And partly because of our report, they got a lot of attention after that. If you're a teacher who teaches at one of those schools, people know, oh, you teach at Brockton High School? They're impressed, And so we've got to find ways to put the word out so that people are, wow, you do that? Okay, so it's partly a marketing issue to what we put out, and it's partly actually making sure that it really is of high quality. 2 weeks ago was a New York City conference on CTE, and it was totally a pep rally. CTE is the greatest thing ever, okay? And I think I may have been the last speaker of the day. And my point was CTE can be the greatest thing ever, but is it always? Okay, and so we've got to do the work to make sure it typically is, so that we deserve. Yes?
Is this working? No. Yep, but does it work? Okay. So I was listening, speaking of verifying quality, I was listening to an interview with the woman who wrote a new book, The Smartest Kids in the World.
Yeah, Amanda Ripley, I think.
Yeah. And she was talking about one of the differences between other countries whose students are really high performing, especially in math, and the United States, is the way that they test their kids. And that, we do tons of testing, but she said that it's sort of like somebody who gets on the scale every morning and looks at how fat they are, and then they think, oh God, that's terrible. And then they just do the same thing the next day.
Yeah.
And so one of the things she said is that in other schools, especially places like Finland, is they do standardized tests, but the stakes are not just high for the schools, it's high for the students. And that is there, we're constantly telling schools if your students don't perform, you're gonna get penalized, but it's like we're afraid to tell students that they're gonna get penalized when they take those standardized tests. And are we not holding kids to a high enough standard so that they feel like those skills are important?
Remember the middle poem I read? All they told me was to graduate. It was exactly that point, okay? We tell kids, you need to graduate. We don't tell them that if you want to get some training after graduation, you may have to take a placement test. And if you didn't learn what you needed to learn to do well on that placement test, you're not going to get into the training, or you're not going to get into the 4-credit courses at the community college. And so there already are high stakes for those kids on knowing those skills, but we don't tell them. And so we've got to find ways to tell them that there are high stakes at the same time that we don't discourage the ones who don't have the skills yet, okay? And so that means mixing the message with there are high stakes, and if you don't have them yet, you need to get busy working really hard, okay? And if you do work hard, you will get the payoff. I tell kids how smart you are depends upon how hard you work and how long you work hard, okay? And your brain is like a muscle, so just like you keep doing curls, you get a big bicep, you keep working your brain, things are going to get easier for you, all right? And so that combination, there's a whole growth mindset is one of the phrases in style these days, and it's helping kids develop a mental orientation to knowing that their intelligence can grow, and then having some strategies to do that. But I totally agree with you. And I'm blanking on my colleague's name at Northwestern, who does a lot of work on these topics, and one of his main points is that we don't tell kids what the stakes are, okay, and then they blow it because they didn't know. If only they had known. I worked hard in high school because I knew that I wanted to go to a good college, and they said, your grades count in high school. Okay, but if you're a kid who knows, you don't really like school that much, you're not all that into going to a great college, you want to do something after high school you can get a job on, nobody's telling you your grades count too. And it's really not your grades, it's your skills. My kids don't do well on the test, I don't ask them about the test score so much, I ask them, what didn't you understand? Okay, so the point is that you understand it, and if you do, you're good, even if you didn't do all the homework that you would have needed to do in order to get the highest grade. So I totally agree with you. We just need to organize to get that message routinely delivered. All right. Yeah.
I'll jump in with one if I might, Ron. We talk a lot about standards and students meeting it, but I sometimes wonder the way we organize standards in our schools tends to make a one pathway to success model the norm. What do we do with our expectations for students to come up not only with high expectations, but a different way of organizing things so that students can have different ways to get there?
I see those as kind of two separate issues. One issue is multiple pathways, right? And then any given pathway has a set of standards associated with it. And so it's a matter of figuring out what's the array of pathways that we want to make available to our kids. What's the capacity we currently have on each one, so where do we need to build capacity? And then for each separate pathway, what are the standards? What are we going to measure? And so the fact that a student doesn't do very well on a particular standard associated with a particular pathway may be kind of irrelevant if that's not the pathway they want to go up. But if they don't do well on the standard associated with the one they want to go up on, then we need to do something to either counsel them onto a different pathway or help them measure up to excel on that one. So I guess I would say if that issue is being processed through the standards discourse, if people are trying to deal with that issue by debating standards, I would try to shift the basis of the conversation to talk about, well, what are the alternative pathways for which this particular set of standards isn't the way we should be measuring it anyway. I mean, so if we're trying to equip kids to go to certain kinds of professions that don't require a college degree, then there's a certain level of math they may need. They may need to be able to do long division and multiplication in their head pretty well on small numbers, but they may never need calculus. They may never need, algebra 2. And so that might be extracurricular. You do that because it's interesting. But as long as you've hit the benchmark for the pathway you want to be on, you're in decent shape, and we don't wring our hands about it.
A couple of things that have come to mind, and you said, we keep doing school the same way we've been doing school forever, and it's built off an industrial model, and we're way past that. And with CTE provides that relevance for some of our students to get to the rigor types of things, which kind of brings in the question with differentiation, instead of, okay, here's 3 things you can do, basically laying out to the student, here's the goal and objective I want you to have. I don't particularly care how you satisfy that. You just show me how you do it. And sometimes it's going to come through a CTE format or through some other way, but to have students reading some novels that they really could care less about. And the other thing you said that I think is very important that is in my head is building these skills early on. Mm-hmm. By the time they get to high school, there's some of these students are so disenfranchised that I'm not going to school, I'm not going to be successful. We don't provide them the skills. What we provide them with is you're not going to be successful, so the easier thing is to not try than to try and fail. Mm-hmm. So wondering what can we do and how can we get at that kind of the archaic Carnegie unit, 180 some days of school, 7 periods a day, 47 to 50 some minutes, needs to kind of be shifted away from so we can do some more maybe innovative things with our education.
I don't know. No, a lot of people, the question is how big a shift is plausible, right? Well, the plausibility has partly to do with the fact that you've got to change a lot of people's mindsets. You have to change institutional arrangements. So we could be here and set a goal that's way out here. Just not going to get there. It will be more satisfying than anything that's in here, but there may be something that's right here that's actually doable, right? And so maybe we can imagine all the way up and down the continuum to close to what we are to something that's totally outlandish compared to where we are. But then strategically, you have to decide, well, where do we cast our lot? Okay? My bias is to try to do things that aren't that far from what we do, just because we got a better chance of succeeding with it. Okay? And then I just, bless the people who are going to do the further thing out, but I'm spending my time trying to do the thing I think we can actually do. And so so figuring out how to put in place opportunities that we can imagine actually delivering on, okay, is the thing. And the green dot image that I talked about, figure out what are a dozen green dots kind of things that we should be making our own students aware of. What are the criteria to have them succeed in getting to those things? And do we have in place opportunities to meet those criteria in our particular school now? And some of the green dot identifications you can identify, you can imagine groups of kids having a club at the school that is about identifying career pathways that you might not think about, putting together the menu of activities and learning experiences you need to have in order to move up those career pathways, bringing in guest speakers that represent the different career pathways, lobbying the school to provide the resources to make those things actually feasible and so on, okay? And so part of it is imagining a doable version of what you want to do and then taking some leadership to make it actually happen. And because I've got a colleague who's trying to organize a national project for an entirely different model of high schools. Okay, I'm going to be a spectator on that one and wish him well to get it done. There are projects, what is it, tech high, there's a type of high school where it's all project-based learning, the KnowledgeWorks Foundation out of Ohio. I forget the name of the network. Does anybody know it? It's a network that operates out of KnowledgeWorks. They've got high schools around the country, some of which are being pretty successful. But trying to move an entire system into a project-based learning mode is, a major undertaking. So, that I saw. Who's got the mic? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just going to comment on you.
Yeah.
You already did, but I think that some strides have been made in that direction of alternative types of high schools. I mean, we've got online classes. You've got kids who graduate from high school who spend half their junior and senior year on the college campus earning credits, and they're juniors when they start college. And so I think we're on the verge and have made some strides, but we still have to get rid of those Carnegie units in the end that are tied to funding and everything.
Well,
so.
the question is, what is the learning experience to which the Carnegie unit is tied? You can imagine changing that that learning experience to where it's something that's engaging kids and we all value, and the Carnegie unit is a metric you put on it. But I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to raise an issue that I'm not asking for an answer, but I think
Yeah.
we should think about it, because you talked about how the tracking, the old tracking system. I'm 61, so I know the old tracking. The old tracking system.
I'm older than you are.
But it is still an issue that we deal with, because I won't name the institution, but if you look at career and technical education at some of our institutions in the mid-school system, you will see overrepresentation. You will see overrepresentation of students of color, first generation, low income, even in our technical careers.
Yeah.
In the, I don't know. I'm from the other side, so I don't know the correct career and technical language, but I'll just use an example.
Right.
You will see an overrepresentation of students of color, first generation, low income students in, say, I think it's called nursing assistants.
Yeah.
And less representation of those students in the RN, what I call the higher licensure.
right.
I don't guess that's the right language, but you get my point. So how do you, any suggestions of how we might begin to deal with that?
Well, we need some more facts before we can make a judgment, right? So the question is whether the nursing assistant's position is the best placement for those kids, right? Because I showed you the achievement gap is there by age 2, okay? So imagine that to get into the higher level things, you need a test score on some metric of a 350, right? And if you got a 340, you can kind of make it, but much below a 340, you're probably going to struggle and not make it. Okay. The question is, what fraction of those people who are disproportionately people of color, who are in the nursing assistant realm, have scores over 350? Okay. If there are a lot of them, or if there are any of them that have scores over 350, we need to say you should be over there. Okay. There's a more lucrative opportunity that you should at least consider. Maybe if you don't like that, if you really want to be a nursing assistant, that's your green dot, then stay where you are, okay? But there's some opportunities that you should consider that you've got the qualifications to get to. If, on the other hand, all the folks in the nursing assistance program have scores of 310 and below, then they don't qualify. They need higher skills to be successful in that one over there. And so a lot of the discussion about disproportionality in placements doesn't consider the criteria for those placements. And so some of that disproportionality is blatant discrimination. Some of the disproportionality is lack of knowledge about the opportunity. And some of the disproportionality is lack of qualifications for the opportunity. And those are they lead to 3 different prescriptions, right? It turns out with tracking in general, the best literature indicates that the kids are pretty much placed in alignment with their skills. There is disproportionality, but the placements are pretty much in alignment with skills. And if there's any set of kids who are out of place, it's the white kids from upper middle class backgrounds who are in higher level courses than they should be in, okay? That their parents have pushed them to be in placements that are higher than what their skills would really qualify them for. Otherwise, we get a pretty smooth distribution. Now, the little nick in here is that it does tend to be the case that the higher level placements are taught at a higher quality than the lower level placements, okay? So you get the kids from the lower level backgrounds aren't taught as well as the kids from higher level backgrounds. And if you average them out, you get no average difference in performance with or without tracking. But there still is some differential access to high quality instruction. And so my preferred fix for that is improve the quality of instruction at every level. So make sure the kids who struggle, even if they're in self-contained arrangements where they're with other kids who struggle, make sure they're taught at a totally world-class quality so that they can move up. In fact, I think the best evidence on whether tracking and grouping helps or not suggests that if the quality of instruction is uniformly really high, kids do best when they're placed with other kids that are at their same level. Because that way you're right on task at the right level for everybody all the time. One group isn't waiting for the teachers to work with another group while there's less downtime. But the problem is really the quality of services that kids get at every level. And that's where I would focus. I would go in, first of all, make sure the placements are appropriate. Say, what are the criteria for each placement? And let's see what the match is between kids' skills and metrics and where they're placed. If we got good matches, then fine, that piece is taken care of. Now, what's the quality of service they're receiving? Okay, I want to be sure they're well served, no matter what their placement. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
That was kind of the point I was going to make of that discrepancy in the education they received, because we have proportionally probably more minority or first-generation students that wash out of our nursing program. And I don't think it's because they lack the skills or ability to get there. Nobody is helping them learn the skills they need to get there because of where they've come
There's
from.
some gap there. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Wait for the mic, so folks in a second hear you.
Oftentimes, like on community colleges, there becomes this class division where, you have the low-income students and the first-generation college students in the TRIO program in the oldest building in the basement, and then you have all the new facilities
Yep.
for all the nursing students, the engineer students, and then we don't see students of color making it there at the same rate. But yet the campuses will focus on pointing out what those diversity people are doing or what those TRIO people are doing.
Anybody see Jay Leno last night? Bill Cosby was on the Jay Leno program. And he talked about way back a long time ago when Jay was just starting off, something happened and it turned out he was on the same program with Bill Cosby. And initially the logo out front had Bill Cosby's names in really big letters and Jay Leno's names in real small letters, right? Bill Cosby appearing with Jay Leno. And he said Bill Cosby went back and made him put both names in the same size. Okay? Because here you had Bill Cosby was the more famous big name at the time, and he was being favored. And so on college campuses and in most institutions, there's some group of people or things that get favored. They get the best quality space. They get the timing of the best times of day. And it's because that's just the way we always do it, right? And maybe because there are vested interests who strategically make sure it happens that way. And so sometimes the lower status people and programs don't have the same clout, the same advocacy, and you got to do the politics, okay? So somebody needs to go in and say, I know we only got one new building and we got some other buildings over here that aren't so good, but how about if we rotate every 3 years? Who gets the building? We trade places every 3 years. Or we do something to compensate for some of us being treated as second-class citizens. Or even just to raise the discussion about how does our organization signal respect? Okay, and take each group and say, well, how do we signal respect for this group and this group and this group? And I think sometimes you can embarrass people into changing some of those arrangements. But you're right, if our goal is to have equal status across a number of different roles, then we have to figure out how is status signaled, and we need to be sure our institution gets the signals right.
Ron, can I ask you one more time about your green dot?
Yeah.
Because this concept of the green dot for each student and a path to get there is terrific. But it either means that students are making wise choices early and somehow the system then responds to get each individual to a green dot, or we're tracking. So I think what the system has tended to do is establish a green dot and send everybody there. Ideas?
Yeah, each kid needs at least one green dot in mind at any particular time. But we should be flexible, right? So if on his or her way to one green dot, she discovers another one and says, oh, I like that one better, then there ought to be supports to shift over and go a slightly different way. I mean, the thing we worry most about with tracking is the kids get trapped, right? They start on a particular trajectory and then there are no crossroads. They can't move. But the thing I don't think is that bad about tracking is that you match kids with learning experiences that kind of fit where they are, right? So the leveling notion that folks have. So that feels like it's appropriate if we do it with a high quality level, but then we also need the flexibility. And we need to anticipate that we want the system to have flexibility. So in each of those trajectories, we teach kids some things we don't think they'll even really need to know, but just in case, they'll have it. I mean, I'm remembering in Robin's presentation earlier today, I think it was, when she talked about the career clusters, okay? And there's some things in the career cluster that you learn that are generic across the whole cluster, right? And then there are things that you learn that are narrower. I forget whether it was industry specific or occupation specific, okay? And then you learn things that are very specific, okay? So you're learning some of the general stuff that lets you know enough about what the alternative options might be that you might be able to shift over. But then you're spending some of your time doing something that's very specific that's going to have you ready on day one when you get into a certain type of situation. And I think those of us who do the planning need to plan in a way so that that mix is there.
Dr. Ferguson, thank
Yeah.
you for being with us today. Just as a woman of color, I get really nervous about tracking students of color. It's just from my own personal experience. There's 8 children in our family. The first 4 of us, I'm one of the 4, we were tracked at a very young age to go into higher education. And that's where we ended up. We weren't born in this country. And then the last 4 children were born in this country, and they were tracked to be in developmental classes. And, they're struggling in college. The last 4, none of them have, 2 of them are in universities right now. And the older 2, never completed, so they had, they're in the mid-20s. I just don't understand how there could be such a discrepancy in one family. And I think it's based upon tracking and how we were tracked at a very young age to go into different routes. I mean, we're the same family.
It's totally reasonable to be nervous about it. But if we resist it, if we try to put everybody in the same pathway and it doesn't work for everybody, we end up with some kids who are just lost in the system. I mean, it's as if we got a big modern 6-lane interstate highway. It's going to take everybody to 16 years of schooling. And if we pretend that's the only highway we're going to travel on, then we neglect the rest of the road system. And we have some kids who fall off that highway and need that other road system. And if we haven't developed it, that's part of it. Now, that is about the system. But trying to keep everybody in the same track where it doesn't fit everybody is not fair to the people for whom it doesn't fit. But you're right, there's some people who will be inappropriately moved off of the 6th level highway too. So that means vigilance. Means we have to have arrangements to monitor and make these judgments along the way. I should also say that there does tend often to be a lot of variability in families. It's not that we understand it totally. Some of it's got to do with parenting. I mentioned my family, 5 boys. 3 of us did pretty well. 2 of us ended up alcoholics and drug addicts. Okay? I personally trace some of that to family dynamics. Okay, I can tell stories. We're all in the same family, but we don't all have the same experience. Okay? Each kid in that family has a very different experiences. I was the firstborn, I got a lot of attention. I was the oldest, so I was always better at everything. So I had nothing in my environment, at least in the family environment, that detracted at all from my sense of possibility. All my brothers had a dominant older brother. I didn't. I was the only one that didn't have a dominant older brother. Okay. They were treated differently because of various kinds of things that we could take the rest of the day to talk about. Okay. So it could be partly schools, and we did have different schooling experiences too. But it's every place you spend time, who your friends are, how the family treats you, what happens in school, all that kind of plays into it. But even for the older kids, there is a survivor's guilt, which I'm kind of reading between the lines. Okay, those of us who make it kind of feel, well, did we really deserve it? And sometimes with kids from less advantaged backgrounds, helping them to deal with the survivor's guilt and the sellout guilt is a way to get them to give themselves permission to succeed to their fullest. And the strongest thing is to help them understand how they can give back. Okay? If they maximize their own success, they maximize their ability to give back to the people they care about. Okay, but it is an issue.
Back on the interview that I mentioned earlier, apparently the only thing I know about education was this interview I heard the other day. But she talks about tracking in different schools around the world. And one of the things she talks about is that while there, in some ways, especially in European schools, there's more tracking at the secondary level where they decide, you're going into a vocation, you're going academic track, whatever. She said that and even though we don't really do that in the United States, but what we do in the United States is that we do track kids earlier than they do in a lot of schools outside the United States. And she talks about in Poland, they have one of the most dramatic improvements in grade school performance, over the last 10 years or so. And one of the things they do in Polish schools is they do zero tracking until, middle school or high school age. And so she feels like the problem with tracking isn't necessarily that when they're in high school they need to start thinking about where they're going, but that we're deciding when kids are in kindergarten, they take some aptitude or, my daughter took this nonverbal IQ test and it said, she was gifted and talented. Should we really be deciding who gets extra gifted and talented services when they're in kindergarten? I don't know.
Did the article on Poland talk about whether teachers are trained to differentiate instruction?
I don't. What she talked about was that she felt like in her research into the Polish schools was that all the kids were exposed to the same material. I don't know if it was differentiated instruction or not.
That may be too simple. The kids come in different day one. Okay, all the gaps are there by age 2 almost. Okay, the patterns are there. So the first day of kindergarten, the differences are there. And the teacher's got to manage that. And so the question is how does a teacher manage that sometimes pretty wide skill distribution in a classroom? Sometimes they have, reading group 1, 2, and 3, which is an early form of tracking and so on. But if you're not going to do it that way, you need to have some way to differentiate. And it's probably that we don't train our teachers very well to manage an effectively differentiated classroom. Okay, we can't wipe around, we could pretend the differences aren't there, but if we do that, somebody's not being very well served. Okay, the kids are pretty oblivious to the differences until 3rd grade. 3rd grade is the year when the kids figure out where they are in the hierarchy and start behaving in a way that reflects where they are in a hierarchy. My youngest who struggles, I mentioned earlier, first I know this from research, but I also know it from being a parent. when he was in 3rd grade, there was a kid named Michael Monroe who thought it was his job to let my son know that he didn't have very good skills. You know, and we would have a meltdown at bedtime. Not at bedtime, meltdown at homework time. And then at bedtime, just before he went to sleep, he would tell you what Michael Monroe said today. You know, your handwriting is not very good. You don't learn things very very fast. Maybe you should be at a different school. Okay, is one of the things Michael Monroe said to him. And so Michael, one way or another, would tell my son, "You're stupid." Okay, and my son would kind of believe it, and we wouldn't get it out of him until just before he went to sleep, and that was kind of the reason he was sure he couldn't do the homework, you know. And so that coping with kids who have different skill levels and serving them all effectively is something, there's no way around that, okay? You got to deal with those differences. And so just looking to say one society tracks kids and one doesn't, and the one that doesn't track does better, if you look deeper in there, there's some kind of differentiation going on if they're not doing better. And ideally it's going on in a way that's giving every kid the benefit of the doubt that by the end of this whole thing, you could be way up here, okay? I tell kids that nobody knows how smart you can be. You don't know, your teacher doesn't know, your parents don't know. The only way to find out is to work really hard for a really long time, and you haven't done that yet, okay, is the message to the kids. The message to the teacher and the parent is that you don't know either. Okay, kids flower at different rates at different times, okay? And the older I get, the more that point comes home to me. Because I see people who didn't look that outstanding at some point in time, and now they look totally brilliant, okay? And the reason is they outworked everybody else. Okay, the book, The Outliers, the 10,000-hour rule, it tells these stories of all these people who, for some accidental reason sometime, ended up spending a lot of time focused on one thing. And now they look like they were just born brilliant to do that kind of thing. But you can tell a deep, thick story about how they got there. And so it's about how do we give every kid the mix that they need, and little sort of almost slogans like tracking is good or tracking is bad kind of miss the point. The question is we need to give a high quality learning experience to every kid, and how do we do that? And how do we not trap kids? How do we make it flexible? So I suspect there is something going on in Poland that's good. If you look at the international distribution of math scores by age 15, Poland ranks above white kids in the U.S. Okay, if white students in the U.S. were a nation, they would rank 15th in the international ranking among nations in terms of their math problem-solving skills by age 15. That comes from the OECD PISA, Program in International Student Achievement Test. There's a new one that'll be out next month, so we'll see if it's changed. But that's.
Yes, I wonder if you could comment on the Common Core state standards that are being debated in the media now for secondary education. I think something like 46 states have adopted those criteria, and what impact do you think they will have on the achievement gap, if any?
It depends. All right. The Common Core state standards are asking for a kind of rigor and detail in thinking and problem solving that will entail some pretty substantial changes in teaching, right? And so the question is, if we put accountability systems in place and we don't equip our teachers to teach in ways that will help their students succeed in the way they're going to be measured on the Common Core, then all of a sudden everybody looks like a failure, right? And so there's some capacity building that needs to be done in preparing people to teach well. Now maybe some fraction of folks are already there. That's the way they've always taught. It's no big deal. There's no change. But I'm in and out of enough schools to know that a lot of people are teaching in ways that are nowhere near what the Common Core is going to require of them, right? And sometimes they don't know it yet, because in a lot of places there's a culture of nice, And so, you know, I'll do some classroom observations and a building walk with an administrator. And the last thing, we watch a classroom, and the administrator pats the teacher on a great job, keep it up. I know what we just saw was some pretty weak teaching, okay? And if nobody is telling them, hey, there's some other things we ought to consider for ways to teach this, then they don't even know yet that they aren't teaching in a way that's going to result in Common Core standards of teaching. I think if we can get there, then there is a kind of rigor that's at least the aspiration with the Common Core that's probably going to be good for everybody. The kids who don't have the preparation, it's bringing everybody to a higher level, at least we're aspiring to that. The kids who are furthest behind already, what it's going to take to get them up there and not have them seem like they're even further behind is something I think we'll find out from going through the process. There's lots of unknowns that are here. Lots of people are really worried about it. But it makes me think about the fact that in Massachusetts, in the late 90s, early 2000s, the law was passed that students had to pass the Massachusetts state exam to graduate from high school. At the time, students were at such a low level that my colleague Dick Elmore said, it's a coming train wreck. It's going to be an absolute train wreck when these kids have to pass that thing to graduate from high school. But if you look at the test scores over time, they went just like that. And it wasn't a train wreck because people rose to the standard, okay? And they did things they never did before. At the schools, we look around and say, you know, it's totally unjustifiable to have all our kids go through 12 years of school and not graduate. We got to figure out a way to make this work. And so they got busy, they searched for ways to do better. They established new professional learning community norms. And there was not a big drop in the graduation rate. But the test scores came up and kids started doing better. So maybe the sense of urgency that comes with knowing that you have to measure up will lead to a new burst of insight and energy that'll have it come out all right. And that's what we can hope.
Dr. Ferguson, thank you again for being here. And one of the things I really appreciate you talking about is advocating for respect and honor for being a contributor and being work and coupling that with high quality and high expectations. And one of the other things I kind of hear you saying is the gratification of when we help as educators students find their way to that green dot. I also got to say, I think you probably have one of the coolest green dots, an economist that advocates and researches the achievement gap and expresses it through poetry. That's really awesome. And my question is there some place to follow or connect with you online? Because I want to read the next poem you're going to write next week. And as a way to keep this in front of us when we go back to our institutions.
The Achievement Gap Initiative has a website, www.agi.harvard.edu. agi.harvard.edu. There are currently more than 200 videos of research-based presentations from various conferences. So on there. The conference, we had about 400 people at Harvard in March for a conference on this kind of stuff, Pathways to Prosperity Conference. Those videos are on the YouTube site at the Graduate School of Education. I don't know, Jocelyn, Jocelyn works with me, she's back there. So you can also, so if actually under AGI, if you click on events, then on conferences, and then there are a list of conferences, and I think if you click on the conferences, it should take you to be able to watch videos from that kind of stuff. But I mean, I go back and forth about on this question of how assertive and how aggressive to be about promoting this social movement notion and trying to pull together on like one website or one place a set of materials that are trying to frame the movement and organize lots of folks like you and others to kind of stay in touch through that. So we develop this sense of collective endeavor and so on. And so it's kind of what you're asking for is that. You're asking for that place that you kind of connect to the movement and keep up with it. And so I'll take your question as encouragement to try to do some of that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, good luck to all of you and enjoy this.